Welcome to my cozy crypt. Have I got a story for you? A tacky tropical tale of love and lust, greed and ghouls, and my personal favorite, death.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you would be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Hey, I'm Mike from VHS.
And how would you describe the music of VHS?
For me, I kind of all over the place. Like, I guess the basic one would be horror metal, but we've called it like death punk or gore metal or horror movie metal, whatever worked. It's just basically death metal about horror movies, I guess. The plain and simple answer.
Kind of punky, fun death metal with a lot of 80s metal influences, right?
There you go. That sounds perfect. Just don't call us pizza thrash, and then I'm a happy man.
Is pizza thrash an actual thing?
It's kind of, like when, I can't think of what year it would have been, but like when Earache was signing like all those retro thrash bands like Gamma Bomb and I guess Municipal Waste, like that style of like retro thrash, like one of the things that got thrown around was like pizza thrash, they'd call it. And it's like bands that like ripped off like the 80s like look and like the flipped up brimmed hats, like lots of neon. And we had a few reviews early on where people like latched onto the fun aspect, like the humor of the band, and they're like, oh, these guys are like Municipal Waste. And then it's like, no, we're not. But either way, I like Municipal Waste, but I don't feel like that comparison really makes sense. And like, I even like throwing around the pizza thrash thing is like, Jesus Christ, guys, like, come on.
No, that's fair to say. VHS doesn't sound anything like Municipal Waste. I think there's a similar love for the 80s, and I think that's what people are. They're conflating one thing with another.
Yeah.
But I don't think musically you sound anything like any of those bands.
Yeah, I think even people throw in the thrash thing sometimes. It's like, we're definitely thrash influenced, but I mean, I think the big thing is like people forget that death metal once like wasn't all blast beats. Like the early death metal had a lot of thrash beats and like that. I guess a lot of people call it the skank beat or whatever. It's like that more punk beat, and like that's kind of where we've fallen into a groove with, I guess, if you want to say that. And like that's where the punky aspect of the music comes through, and it's just, I don't know, that sometimes leads people to call us like lump us in with like the retro thrash and all that stuff, and I don't like it.
So I should mention that I've actually interviewed you before for the blog.
Yeah.
We've done a couple of Q&A interviews for previous albums, but this is your first time on the podcast, and I'm excited to finally talk with you. Let's just briefly go over the history of the band. When did you form VHS, and what were your intentions at the time?
So I think like 2015, I think, is when we first started. We kind of started out of my brother-in-law wanted to do like a Gore cover show, actually. And so it was me. I got talked to a few of my buddies, which was our original drummer. No, he's still our drummer, Andy. And then our original bass player, Jimmy. So we did that. Like the cover show went really good. We did like the costumes and the whole 9 yards, and it was a lot of fun. And then after the show, my wife actually said, like, well, why don't you keep jamming with those guys and like do something about horror movies? And I'm like, oh, geez, like that's a great idea. Like I've always been like a fan of like Impetigo, all the Razorback Records stuff, Rigor Mortis, like Mortician, all the horror movie bands I've always been a big fan of. So I always wanted to have a band that was influenced by horror movies, but it just, for whatever reason, it never really came together like to this extent. So we decided to keep playing. So the first time we jammed, they had like a recording setup. So we're like, well, let's record some stuff and see how it sounds. So the first time we jammed, we recorded Hairspray and Blood Spray and Fornicating in the Furniture Store, like really rough versions, I guess, but they're actually the same versions that are on our demo. So from there, I asked the guys, I said, hey, do you mind if we like start like I think we did a SoundCloud first, because I didn't even know what Bandcamp was at the time. So I threw up a few songs on that, and people seemed to like it. And then we kept going, and then like it almost got to be like an addiction. And I was like, every time we'd jam, it's like, we need to record another song. So every time we'd go, we'd like record another song, and then before we knew it, we had like, I can't remember how many songs were on the first demo there, but it was like at least 6 or 7 songs. And then we're like, okay, let's do like a physical copy. And we also got in touch with Mike from Horror Pain Gore Death about doing like a digital, like an official digital version that would like get sent around for review and everything. So initially it was called Rewind or Die, and then that ended up being an issue with, I think, not so much an issue, but Mike was friends with the guy who does Lunch Meat, who is like a big VHS company and does like lots of like merch and re-releases for old movies on VHS. So that was their tagline was like Rewind or Die. So we're like, well, we don't want to step on anybody's toes. So we're like, okay, let's change the name. We changed it to Hi-Fi Horror Uncut Edition. And then that came out, I think, I want to say we brought it out around October in 2015. And that was a lot of fun. And a lot of people seemed to really like what we were doing. And I really got like a feel for not just what I wanted the music of the band to be, but also like the art style and everything like that. Like we had Nev from Gruesome Graphics did like our original logo, which is like the zombie head with like missing teeth and like the blood drips, say VHS. And kind of from that, it's like I kind of realized that if you decide that people see first, like the people's first impression, if it's like cool art, they'll probably give you a chance. So that's like right from the get-go, I wanted to make sure that everything we released had like cool artwork, like well done, like matched the horror vibe that we were going for. Yeah, so that came out. Lots of good reviews. Had a few people get in touch about doing like the first album, the debut album. So that was, I think, pretty much right when we had the demo finished and out. We were already started working on the album, and we had like a handful of songs, and we decided like right from the get-go that we were gonna re-record the demos, since we had like better understanding of recording, and like tried to make it sound a little bit better, because those first songs were a little rough, so they ended up sounding a lot better. And that ended up being like Screaming Mad Gore that Splatter Zombie brought out. That was super fun to put together, because one thing I always really liked about music and like death metal and stuff is all the guests that bands would have on their albums. I always thought that was kind of cool, that you'd like guest vocals on this song by such and such, and it's like, oh, that's cool, let's listen to this and see if you can pick out who it is or the difference, right? So, and then that one was, we got in touch with Steve-O from Impetigo, which was cool. When we reached out to him, he was actually already a fan of the band, which just blew my mind to begin with. And then Cam from Massacre. So the first album, we had Steve-O, Cam, all these guys that like I was like would consider huge influences, and like reaching out to them was super cool. Like I never expected them to even get back to me and like ever say that they do guest vocals for us. So that was super cool. And then that, you know, that album like really opened a lot of doors for us. It's one of those, it's looking back now, it's kind of funny, because everyone's like, metalheads are always like, oh, a band's first album is always their best album. And it's like, now we're working on album 4. The new one that's going to come out is album number 4. And it's like, just sharing stuff around and seeing people talk. And it's like, I have seen that a few people say that they think the first album's the best one. Actually, my wife says that too, which is funny, but it's just, it makes me laugh. And I'm like that too, where I'll say like, I prefer the first album by a lot of bands. Either way. So from there, you know, we did the new batch, and the new batch was kind of rocky, I guess, if you want to say, not music wise, but like band wise. Like our drummer was going through a lot of personal stuff after we did the basic tracks, so it took a while like to get like all the guitar tracks done and all the vocals done. So that one took us a lot longer than we expected. And a lot of the times it was just me in the studio with our buddy Mike, who mixed it, working on stuff. And then that came out. I don't want to say it put like a negative spin on the album or anything, like, because it's like we worked really hard on it, then we brought it out, and at the same time it's like the band itself was kind of fizzling out. Like after the album came out, it was basically, I did a few things with just me and Patrick Bruss from Crypticus was helping me do like mixing and drum programming. So like after the new batch came out, we did a split with Lord Rot, a split with Ruin, and the first Xmas EP, and I forget what else we did, but I did a whole bunch of stuff, like just drum machines. And I don't know, looking back, it's not maybe ideally the best material that we've done. Like songwriting wise, I think it's strong, but for me, it's like I always miss like the real drums, because Andy brings like a ton of energy to the band, and like it was just it was fun to keep going, because I always try to stay as busy as I can, but at the same token, it was kind of not depressing, but just it's not ideally where I wanted to go with the band, if you know what I mean. So after that, we actually, it's funny because I can't remember what exact date, but we got a call or an email, I guess nobody calls anybody anymore, about opening for the Black Dahlia Murder and Homewrecker. And I was like, well, our town is super small, like, 100,000 people. We don't get much at all in terms of metal shows. So I was like, okay, like, what can I do to get a live lineup back for the band? Because I want to keep doing this, and I want to like play shows and do whatever. So I was like, first thing is like I called Andy, And as I asked him, like, hey, do you want to keep jamming? And he was kind of uncertain at first, and then I guess he thought about it for a bit, and he was game to come back, and I was super pumped about that. And then Jimmy, who was our original bass player, basically after like the new badge came out, kind of stepped away from music and was like, I'm not really into it anymore. And so that was his decision, and I respected it. And so when it came time to find a bass player, my buddy Curtis, that I've played in bands with before, like years ago, like late 90s, 2000s, was the first guy who came to mind. And I called him, and he was down to start jamming. Then we got together and like learned a bunch of the songs again for the show. It went really well. And then we went right into recording the third album, which is We're Gonna Need Some Bigger Riffs. And that was like, we were like right back into it, like full steam ahead, like working on that. And that was a lot of fun to put together. It was the first album where we kind of had like a theme for the entire album. Like before, we've had like, obviously it's horror movie based, but for that one, it's like, it's mostly, I'm not going to say it's all aquatic horror, if you will, but for the most part, it's all like based on sea monster movies, killer whales, stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun, and we got Trevor from the Black Dahlia Murder on a song, and Matt from Exhumed on a song. And Matt actually did the intro to the album too, which is super cool. I kind of looked at it like, if this is going to be the last album we ever do, we might as well try to go out with a bang as far as like guest vocalists go and shoot for the top. And both of them were down to be on the album, which was awesome and came out super cool. I think it's probably, at the time, it was definitely, I felt that was our best album. So we promoted the hell out of that one, and people seemed to like it. And basically then that brings us into 2020. And so we were excited to have lots of shows lined up and promote the album and do like a CD release party even at that. And basically we know what happened, right? The pandemic happened. So all of our plans basically went out the window completely. And then instead of like worried about that, we kind of we took a bit of a break. And then Andy actually messaged me and said, hey, I've got a bunch of drum tracks that I recorded a long time ago, and why don't we see what we could do with them? And just, even if we can't get together, let's try to write some songs and record. I have a small recording set up here, and he has one at his place, so we figured, what the hell, let's see what we can do. So he had like maybe 5 or 6 drum tracks, and so I wrote songs to those, and I was really excited because I'm like, okay, we're doing something new. So I said, hey, let's keep going. I'll send you some ideas, you send me some ideas, and see what happens. And then before we knew it, we had a whole album's worth of material written, and we were really excited about how it was turning out. And that ended up being like our new album that's coming out later this month, Gore from Beyond the Stars. Yeah, and then that's basically where we are now.
Before we talk about the new album, I want to backtrack a little bit. From the very beginning, you had locked into this. You already had your concept solidified. So, the band name was VHS. You were writing about horror movies. The artwork always kind of recalled the VHS artwork of the 80s and 90s. I don't know how old people are who listen to this podcast. I'm assuming most of them are younger than me just because I'm pretty old at this point. But the videotape culture and the horror movie culture of the 80s and 90s was pretty similar to the metal culture in terms of tape trading and stuff like that. And there were a lot of smaller studios putting out less reputable, low budget grindhouse horror movies, like Full Moon, for example. That kind of became its own culture, and so I think it's always been a natural fit between the horror movie culture and the metal culture, just because the two were so similar in so many different ways.
Yeah, it's funny too that you brought up tape trading, because when I was, I don't even know how old I would have been, like I guess between 18 and 20, there was a guy named Phil who ran a zine called Brutalized, and we used to write back and forth, and we would actually like not like metal music, but we would actually like dub like the craziest horror movies each of us had, and like would send them back and forth. So that's a lot of the times when I would find like the crazier stuff, like the underground, like German stuff, like Necromantic 2, like Violent Shit, that whole series, Zombie 90, like all this like really low budget but super gory, like I don't want to say they're crappy movies, but they're not the best movies, but they're entertaining and they're fun, and it's new because you've never seen it before. But that was like that tape trading culture like was still there, and like people were using it for like movies and stuff, which was super cool. Like, because that's how I actually got into a lot of the more obscure stuff right off the hop.
Yeah, and death metal was fairly low budget music for a long time. Low budget meaning nobody really had a lot of money to invest in their recordings, but the bands never let that stop them. In the same way, you had these horror auteurs who probably didn't have access to the same level of special effects or practical effects that somebody like John Carpenter or David Cronenberg would have, but never let that stop them. That just, if you have to fill a condom with a bunch of caro syrup and food coloring and use that as a special effect, then they would do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's whatever works. You gotta use what you got and make it work, basically.
In the 5 years since you released your first album, since 2015, you've released 3 albums, where the 4th album about to drop in a few weeks, and a number of splits and EPs as well. I'm curious about what your songwriting process is like. You mentioned drum tracks. Do the songs always start with a riff, or do they sometimes start with the drums as well?
Outside of the new album, which that's kind of like a very backwards approach to writing music. It usually starts with a guitar. Like, either I'm pretty much always writing. Like, I've always, whenever I pick up a guitar, I barely ever want to play somebody else's music, if that makes sense. Like, obviously, like when I first started playing that, I learned other people's music, and it was cool. And then you get to the point where it's just like, well, I don't know, if I'm going to play guitar, I might as well be doing it for a purpose. And like, usually it starts with the riffs. I'll usually either record like a really shitty demo of just the guitar part or guitar parts and send it to Andy, or even a lot of the stuff is just like, we'll be in the jam space and he's like, hey, do you have any riffs? And then we'll just work on something. And then usually, more often than not, that'll lead to like a song. And like, each time we get together, we always try to like write a song and figure out a song or whatever. We're very much like, I think with us, I don't want to say that like we don't overthink things, I guess. And like, I don't want to say that we think good enough is okay, but like, for definitely like the first 2 albums, and to a certain extent some of the third, we would not record in the usual way, because usually like a band goes into the studio, they'll record like all the drum tracks. That's done. Okay, we'll do bass, then they'll do guitars, and then vocals last, whatever. For us, we're always like we're a very live band. Like we really like capture that energy of like three dudes in a room just playing music. So half the time when I would be like, okay, this is a new song, guys, like we'd basically sit down, learn it, and then record it in the same day. So we're always trying to be as creative as possible. It's just I'm always looking forward like to doing new stuff. Like I'm always thinking about the next album, the next song, the next whatever, next riff, if you will. But yeah, generally it's always starts with the guitar, and then we'll go from there.
Now, do you write songs with a movie in mind, or do you tie in the movies after the songs are done?
See, sometimes like it all depends. Like a lot of times the idea for songs will start with lyrics. Like generally if I'm watching a movie, even if it's a movie I've seen 100 times, if there's like a certain line in the movie or like a certain scene that just kind of makes me think of like a lyric or like even just a line from a song, I'll usually write it down and like come back to that later. But generally I wouldn't say the movie influences the songwriting itself. It might influence like, say if I write like, say what's a good example, like Room 36 from the first album is like a doomier, slower song. So if I have a song like that, obviously I'm going to try to match like a certain movie with the feel, right? Like you don't want like a super cheesy, like fun movie to have like a doom song, you know what I mean? So in a sense, the movie might influence the songwriting, but generally it's the song comes first, and then I'll try to figure out what movie I think fits with it, or what movies I have in mind for like songs, and then like just kind of going through them and seeing what sticks, and like if I have a line of what line might work with the riffs, and then it basically goes from there. And sometimes I'll throw on a movie and play guitar while I'm watching it, and sometimes that happens, but that's not very often. Usually it's too late at night by the time I'm watching a movie, so I can't have the guitar up too loud or the movie up too loud, but either way.
Never get credit for my discovery. Who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow.
Sun mixed with blood, there is no escape.
November 27th, you'll be releasing your 4th album, which is called Gore from Beyond the Stars. Tell me a little bit about the concept behind the album.
I think it actually came like last. I'm always pretty open about, I don't know if open's the right word, but I'm always posting about like the band and like what we're working on or like what we're working on next. And I think it was actually the post where Steve-O from Impetigo actually said about the monster, like the Sea Monster, do a Sea Monster album, and that's where the album title came from. I said like something about we're gonna need some bigger riffs, and then like I can't remember, and somebody said, well, why don't you go to space next? And I'm like, well, that's not a bad idea. Like there's a lot of cheesy sci-fi movies or like space horror movies, and so I thought, what the hell, let's see what happens. And then basically the pandemic happened, so nothing happened for a while. But then when we started putting the album together, those were the songs that I was thinking about for the concept of it. So I was watching Extro and Creature, Incredible Melting Man, Jason X, Earth Girls Are Easy, and all the songs that ended up, or all the movies rather, that ended up influencing the album and being part of it. And like it just ended up being like a fun concept. It was different. It lended itself really well to lyric writing. I found like a lot of the movies have like really cool taglines, and that worked well with either like making up a clever like song title or like for an actual lyric itself. And it also kind of lends itself to like using a lot of movies and samples that aren't really used very often, because I find like a lot of the bands that end up being like horror movie influenced or use horror samples, it's you hear a lot of the same stuff. Like you hear samples from Pieces a lot and from Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff like that, and it's like I'm still a fan because I like those movies, so any horror movie influenced band I'm down with. But at the same token, like for us, I want to try to move it kind of just being past a band that uses horror samples as being horror influences. That makes sense. So like always wanting to use movies that people generally don't have songs about, like samples. And so that was the whole kind of the in space concept kind of lent itself to that, and it just ended up being super cool. And then we had a few ideas in mind for like the cover art, and then I'm actually a huge fan of the TV show Ink Master, kind of like a tattoo based soap opera drum thing that's like a train wreck, but I can't stop watching it. And there's an artist on one of the seasons named Creepy Jason, who was an amazing artist, and I just happened to reach out to him on Instagram and ask him, like, have you ever done any art for bands? And he said, yeah, I've done a few things. And he sent me a piece that he had done that he wanted to have a different band use, and it was like sci-fi related and really cool. But I basically said to him that like if we're gonna do it, I want it to be like an all new piece. Aside from that, though, I pretty much all I said was I want it to be in space, have an astronaut, and be melty. And he basically filled in the rest, and it's turned out amazing. So it's been really fun to put together like the layout side of things too. So I just think the concept itself lends itself to be like a really fun album. So I hope people dig it when they get to hear it.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought of two things when you announced the album. The first thing I thought of was some bands do a series of albums or do a trilogy where they explore different themes, like ISIS did. They did Celestial, which was their air themed album, and then they did a water themed album, and then they did Panopticon after that. And so it's funny in that sense that VHS did their nautical themed album, and then right after it their space themed album. And the other thing, as somebody who was a teenager in the 90s, I definitely remember there was a kind of a trend towards, sending your monster to space. So you mentioned Jason X. Hellraiser 4 was, I think, the installment of the Hellraiser movies where Pinhead went to space. You also had movies like Event Horizon, which was kind of itself a Hellraiser in space kind of movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a period where there's a lot of space, a lot of like black holes being conduits to hell and things like that going on.
Yeah, it's funny too because like when I initially like was exploring like what songs I wanted to use, like two of the ones that actually came up were Hellraiser Bloodlines, which is the space one, and Event Horizon. And then at the end of the day, we didn't even end up using either of those for the album, but they're definitely two of my favorite space ones. Just we ended up going in a bit more of a, I don't want to say cheesy approach, but a lot of them were like, it's probably the album where we've used the most movies from the 90s. Yeah, like early 90s, because like, there's a song about Split Second, a song about I Come in Peace, which is just a ridiculous movie I remember seeing when I was like 11 or 12. Leprechaun in Space, so that's like the early 90s too, like just something that you'd see on the counter in the movie store and just realize it's completely ridiculous, but you had to see it anyways. Like that's kind of the what we were going for with this one.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk about what other space movies inspired this album? Because I noticed there's definitely an aliens inspired song on this, I should say.
Yeah. So yeah, there's Nostromo, which is obviously that's the Alien song. It was tough to decide which Alien movie I actually wanted the song to be about, because my favorite of the series is actually Aliens, but I don't know, I had the idea for like the song about the first one, so that kind of came together. Yeah, I don't know. There's lots of different, trying to think of what other songs are on the album that aren't super common movies, because there's the songs so far we've released. The first one was about Life Force, which is a ridiculous movie where the main star is pretty much naked for the entire movie. Space vampires, can't go wrong.
I mean, Life Force is such a batshit crazy movie that
it's ridiculous.
I think it's definitely a movie that if you've seen it, I still don't really understand what I watched when I watched that movie. Like the concept was so out there. She's a vampire, but she's also kind of an alien.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one to explain to people if they've never seen it. And then you throw in like bat creatures and people being like sucked into a husk and all the weirdness. It's a movie that definitely fits with VHS for sure, to a T though. Like we definitely like to throw in those oddball movie choices from time to time for sure.
So you mentioned you had started working on this during the lockdown. Where did you end up actually recording it?
Actually, we ended up recording it just in our houses. We were in a jam space they were actually in this jam space for years, and they had everything set up to record, so we could record like super fast and super easy whenever we had like an idea or a song. And then just kind of due to the pandemic and everyone being like super leery about like getting together, like he moved all of his stuff out of the jam space and into his house and set it all up to record. So he had all that stuff set up in his house to record drums. So he was recording there, and back when the band first started kind of having some issues after the new batch there, like I said, I bought like an interface for my computer and like started learning more about recording guitars and vocals just at my place, like, so it's easier, like I could demo songs and whatever, just so we could be a little bit more self-sufficient. And then that's basically, he had the setup for drums. He'd record the drums and send them to me, and I kind of used it like as a good opportunity to learn more about recording and mixing. So this is actually the first album that we've done that I've mixed on my own. The previous ones were all a buddy of ours named Mike, who was basically like always at the jam space, always watching us jam, and always helping us with recording. And then this time, it's just, I just kind of wanted to see what we could do to make things sound a little bit better. Not to say that I've ever had an issue with any of our previous albums, but there was always things that I felt we could stand to make a little bit better. And then with this one, I think it's probably our best sounding album yet. And it's funny how it ended up being that when we kind of just recorded it in our basements. And yeah, I don't know. It was definitely very different recording this album than anything previously, for sure.
Now, did you end up mastering it yourself as well?
We actually had Alejandro that mastered We're Gonna Need Some Bigger Riffs. Master this one again. I think I'm getting better at mixing, but mastering, I still have no idea. And he always makes us sound awesome and loud and huge. So definitely never opposed to sending an album off to him to put the final touches on.
So as part of the promotion for this album, you reached out to your fans through social media, requesting videos, requesting essentially selfies, right? Of people wearing VHS merch and dressed in costumes and Halloween garb. What was the idea behind the video?
Basically, what the idea was is I just thought it'd be cool, kind of just get like everyone that's supported us, and like all of we've had people that have like been there since day one, and they were all super excited to send in videos. So basically what it's going to be is like, we're doing a video for the song Earth Girls Are Easy. Even with the pandemic, it's kind of been hard to figure out concepts for videos, but we filmed some stuff with me, and there's a guest vocalist on the song who we haven't really announced yet, but he did some stuff. And then we have like some alien footage, and then we were like, I was thinking, like I said, it'd be super cool if like people just wanted to like do like a short clip, like either like wearing a VHS shirt or a mask or whatever. And then we just kind of like edited into the video. So we ended up getting quite a few people sending in stuff, and it's all super cool footage. We were actually supposed to start editing the video today, but ended up getting sidetracked working on a few other things. So that's basically going to be the video that we're going to release on release day. So like November 27th, the full album is going to be up for everyone to listen to, and we're going to release the video the same day. And I think people are going to like it and be pretty damn surprised by the song itself. It's not completely different than stuff we've done before, but I don't think people are gonna be prepared for the guest vocalist, because that's completely different than anything we've done before.
And so how is this album being released? Are you guys self-releasing it?
We always put it up on Bandcamp ourselves, like digitally, but as far as labels go, it's Grindhead Records from Australia and Funeral Hymns Records from Canada actually are co-releasing the vinyl and tape version, and Grindhead is doing the CD by themselves. And we're even talking to a few companies about doing a VHS version of it. So it'll be the first time like we've done like a actual like VHS tape. I guess VHS on VHS tape is getting kind of ridiculous, but I think it'll be super fun. I'm actually looking at like, we've always done lots of videos, like lyric videos, like clip videos or whatever. So this one I'm looking to do like a video for each song on the album. I found some like ridiculous TV commercials from like the 80s and 90s that are like alien based or space related. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'll throw all that stuff in there and just gives people something fun to watch. I think it's about time that we had one of our albums released on VHS. So now's the time.
Now, do you edit the videos yourself?
So any of the ones, like the lyric videos and stuff, yeah, I'll just do myself. I don't want to say that I'm frugal or anything, but it's just, I have a lot of fun doing it. Like, it's super fun to like pick out clips and edit them all together and just see what we can come up with. We did actually, for the previous album, we had filmed a video for Death and Carnage Coming in Waves. And it like totally professionally filmed, but once again the pandemic kind of threw a wrench in there, and it has taken a really long time for it to get edited just because of everything that's going on. So that is still coming out. It should be out soon, actually. I'm pretty sure. Which is, I just find it funny that we're working on releasing the album after it, but at the same time it's a super cool video, and excited for that to come out so people can see it, even if it is a year after the album came out, but still.
Prior to this album, you released a covers EP called Covered in Cheese. Tell me a little bit about the concept behind the EP and how you chose the songs that you eventually recorded.
Oh, that was pretty fun. That's actually like after we finished the album, we did that Cannibal song, that 9-minute Cannibal song, Primitive and Pissed Off, and I had the idea about recording some covers for a long time, and we've done a few here and there. Like we did Chainsaw by the Ramones and the Ballad of Harry Warden. And just, it all kind of started as me working on recording some like super cheesy, like 80s cover songs and things that I really liked. And I kind of said to the guys, I'm like, do you guys want to just do like a covers EP and see what happens? And we kind of started off like, we recorded it super sporadically. So we did the Full House theme song and the Tiffany song first. We recorded those and released those kind of like as like a sneak peek. It's like, okay, here's what we're working on. And then just basically as we finished a song, we we'd just add it to the Bandcamp page. Little by little, we added a few songs here and there, and it's just they're all basically just 80s songs that I really like, and I thought would kind of make super silly but cool death metal covers, I guess, if you will. And then we're actually not even finished because we got busy with, I've been busy with working on like promoting the album and editing videos and whatever. We actually still have 3 more songs to finish and add to it. And then we're gonna see about doing like a super limited like CD version or a tape version or something of it. But basically, it was just something fun to do. We had the recording setups still happening, and it's all songs I've loved for years, and just wanted to see what the hell they'd sound like as death metal songs, I guess.
And what was the reaction to this?
You know what? It's kind of funny. Like, I was like pretty, I don't want to say hesitant, but I was. You're not gonna release the theme song to Full House and expect like the super cult metal guys to understand what the hell you're going for. But honestly, nobody seemed to have anything bad to say about it. There's a lot of people who were surprised by the songs we picked, but thought we did a good job with what they were. But honestly, if anybody hates it, I haven't heard it yet. But I could see people maybe just thinking it's silly for sure, and that's kind of what we were going for.
I mean, there's a whole tradition of metal bands doing covers of, you know, all their influences, and sometimes like a surprising song would get on there, like when Vader covered a Depeche Mode song. But I think like doing an entire album of like, you know, Tiffany and Bananarama and some of the other choices that you have there was pretty bold. But it also kind of ties into the theme, because I think of all this stuff as being part of the same like 80s and 90s kind of, you know, suburban mall culture where we were kind of getting all this stuff at the same time. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean the Bananarama thing is just totally Karate Kid.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Like I'm a huge Karate Kid fan, and that's totally where that one came from. And like some of the other ones, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. One that we haven't finished yet is another movie one. It's from Rad. We're doing Send Me an Angel, and it's just ridiculous, but I think that'll be a lot of fun. People will like that one when that one finally comes out.
Once the album is out, what do you guys have in store? Like, what are you planning on doing next?
It's a great question. I'm trying to look into like doing like a virtual release show, I'm very not savvy when it comes to like technical internet things, and just how I said that probably shows how much I don't know anything about it. But like that's, you kind of just have to see what other bands are doing, like to just be doing something right now, right? Like nobody wants to be playing shows, but at the same time, everyone wants to play shows. You know, like I don't think any band wants to be the first band to play a show because there's going to be a witch hunt right afterwards. You know, so like the virtual show would be a cool idea if we could pull it off. I mean, I've seen some bands have done a really good job, and then other bands have kind of missed the mark, where it's just like crappy cell phone quality audio, and it's like, if we're gonna do it, I want to at least try to make sure that we do it right. I think for this album, we're gonna really just kind of. I'm already thinking about the next one, but at the same time, I kind of want to not jump into the next one right away. Like I think with some of the previous albums, it's like we've finished the album, it's got pressed and out, and then there's like the initial excitement where everybody's excited and we sell however many copies, and then I kind of already am looking at what's next. And I think with this one, I kind of want to like let it ride for a bit and like try to promote it more after the fact, and like just make sure that we get as many people to hear it as possible, because we are really proud of it, and I think it's probably, I don't want to say it's our best album because that's kind of corny when bands say that, but it's definitely our best sounding album, and I think it has some of our best songs. And I would just want to make sure that we don't just skip ahead to the next album too quick before people get a chance to hear it, because I actually just did a podcast a few weeks ago, or maybe not even that long ago, where one of the guys on it only knew that we had one album out. And he's like, "You're working on your fourth album?" Like, yeah. And it's like, and I think part of that is because we're always excited to bring out new stuff, right? But at the same time, maybe people don't stay up to date as much as we think they are. So the only other thing we're really working on is we're doing a split with another Canadian band called Casket Slime that is really gross and really cool, really nice guys, and so we're gonna start working on that soon. We have kind of like the sequel to that 9-minute Cannibal song. We're working on another like super long kind of song about Nightmare City, so City of the Walking Dead. Kind of like our whole thing, our whole like thinking behind that is we're like, our songs are always super short, and we're like, well, let's see if we can write something that's like much more epic, and like, you know, and then you finish the song and it's like 9 minutes long, like, holy Jesus. And then I thought like, well, let's do like a side B to that. Let's do like, okay, we did Cannibals for side A, let's do like a zombie song. So like I had actually written like a few pages of lyrics once when I was watching Nightmare City one time. It's like one of my favorite movies. And so that should be coming together soon. I've been slowly picking away at that, working on that. But like I said, we're just kind of focused on the new album, like working on videos, working on the VHS version. And today I was working some silly like extra things we're going to add into like the bundle. We had some really awesome posters made for the album art. So we're kind of going with the space theme. We're going to do like some like really silly, cheesy like VHS space camp paraphernalia, and just really silly but super fun. And I hope people dig it. Like we're far from being like a typical metal band. Like we're not out to look tough or evil or anything like that. We're always about fun. So I hope people can see that and appreciate it for what it is. And then I don't know, we'll see. I can tell you one thing though, the next album's going to be about vampires. We've already decided that.
You said that you think this is the best VHS album so far. You also mentioned a lot of people think that your first album is the best album. What would you say the differences between your songs now and your songs when you first started?
The biggest difference is that we actually maybe know how to play them now before we record them. That sounds funny, but that first album was like, we were just so excited to be recording that it was like, hey, I got this song, let's record it. And then we'd listen back to it maybe like while we're mixing. It's like, did we play that right? It's like, well, it's good enough now. We can't do anything about it. So I think that's what a lot of people liked about the first album. It was like super punky and super raw, and production was not very good, but at the same time it had a certain charm to it. And then with the new album, it's like, I don't think stylistically we've changed a ton since then. It's maybe like, it's not as raw, but I still think it's punky. I still think it's still energetic and it's still catchy. It's just 5 years later, and every band's going to sound different. So I think it still has a lot of what people will like about the first album, and I hope that they can hear what we put into the album and how the songs are maybe as strong as the first album. I think one of the things too about the first album that people latch on to is that it was our first stuff, and maybe it was kind of centered around movies that people were more familiar with, if you will. I know I don't want to say any names or anything, but when I was like sending the first album around like to buddies and like having them like seeing what they thought of it, and like a few people said like, oh, it's super cool, but the typical movies that horror movie based bands use. And I was like, well, I don't really think I've ever heard a Chopping Mall song before, but still, I guess I see where they're coming from. So maybe like that album has like songs and ideas that they can latch onto easier because they're familiar with it. But I don't know. I'm all I know is that I'm super proud of both albums, and hopefully people that like the first one are still around and listening to us now and will give the new one a shot.
So, Gore from Beyond the Stars will be out November 27th of this year. Mike, tell people how they can order this album.
Right now, it's up on... We have a CD pre-order going right now on our Bandcamp, and Grindhead has it up on their Bandcamp as well. Our Bandcamp is www.bandcamp.com/VHS horror. And I think everything's kind of up in the air because of shipping times and everything. This is the first album that we've done on vinyl, so it's coming. But I think at probably the time of release, all we'll have is the CD available. The vinyl's coming, but it's probably going to be a little bit longer due to the pandemic and shipping times being what they are. The tape is coming as well. I know that the label's already put in the order for that, but same thing as vinyl. I think all the plants are kind of behind a little bit, and like shipping times are kind of all over the place. So hopefully, knock on wood, everything will be available on release day. 110%. The digital version will be up because it's already there. But hopefully everything will fall into place. We'll have, I think for us, we're just going to be doing the CD and tape version available. We are getting copies of the vinyl, but I'll be honest, I don't want to go through the headaches of shipping vinyl. So I'm probably going to let the two other labels take care of that. And whenever those do happen to be available, we'll make sure to post links on all of our pages. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/VHS Thunder Bay. We're very, very busy on there. We're always posting stuff, horror related, band related, or in between. So just keep an eye on there for news about when all the formats are going to be out. Same with the VHS version. And that's going to be a little bit later than the rest of the formats, just because we want to put in the time to make sure it's done really well and edited well and just as entertaining as we can. But yeah, everything's coming. For the vinyl, I know everyone's all about colored vinyl, so we did something a little bit different. The plant offers, like, I don't want to say mystery colors, but it's basically mystery colors. So we're getting 200 copies, and it's going to be all different colors. So whatever somebody orders, they're not going to know what they're going to get, but it's all going to be colored vinyl. So a nice surprise for whoever happens to order vinyl. And yeah, I'm just super excited for people to hear it. And November 27th, VHS in space.
Is there anything else you want to say?
I don't know. I've kind of rambled enough, I think, but definitely thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun. It's been weird doing interviews on the phone and like on podcasts and stuff. Everything else has been text. So it's new, but I like it. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. Thanks so much, Mike.
No problem. Thank you.
Tune in next week, kiddies, for another terribly traumatic tale.